just been living hell. It's been like not myself, I'm pissed off, I get frustrated, and it's like, it's not even me talking, it's like the pain talking, and it's like, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to say it that way. Just messed up. Just messed up.
Mike is just one of the approximately 2,000 people who are homeless in London every single night. You may not encounter homelessness while walking down our city streets, but the issue is much bigger than the eye can see.
We think of homelessness kind of as a general public. We have this kind of image of the chronic homeless, the severely addicted, person living under a bridge. And we don't realize that that's kind of just one small piece of what homelessness looks like. So we think that once you're homeless, you're always homeless, and you're some kind of other, you're some kind of different state of being. And we don't realize that for the vast majority of people, homelessness is just a transition period. So it's something that people go through kind of when they bottom out, and they get out the other side.
Because the problem is so big here in London, the city's shelters and outreach networks have teamed up.
So we have things like the Homeless Coalition to bring us together, where we can work together on common causes and be strategic in what we're doing. Because there's a lot of services in the community, but we all are headed in the same direction, and so we need to be working together.
London's got one of the highest populations of homeless people in all of Canada per capita. So like Mission Services statement is there's always an open door to them. We're able to hook them up if they're just looking for a place to stay.
First 42 days or something is supposed to be free, but then it's like once December 1st hits, they kick you out or it's pay per stay. So I had to decide between pay per stay and having the money to look for an apartment.
To give you an example, today I basically have 3 beds for people. I know that the Salvation Army is running pretty full, as well as the Unity Project. So the capacity, we're pretty much at capacity, especially during the winter months.
We are overworked. We are well beyond provincial benchmarks. So we're working with about 45 individuals per staff person at any given moment. And so that, that's a lot. But again, we're a crisis service. We can't say, I'm sorry, your crisis is going to have to wait a week and a half. We'll see you then.
There's no one solution to the problem. You can't just go out and give them new clothes and give them a job and say, you're cured of your addiction. Now, go and be a part of society. So
I think the fact that we're here long term, no matter how many failures a guy has, I think that's one of the biggest things, because this is a long-term war. It's not a single battle.
So homelessness isn't only a housing issue, but it's always a housing issue. So there's other complexities like health and mental health and addictions and food and transportation and all those kind of levels of complexity. But if you want to solve homelessness, it's giving someone a place to stay.
I know there's housing out there. It's just a matter of me finding a place.
We provide an outreach service to them if they so choose to be engaged with us. There's nothing mandatory about our service. It's basically if we have something to share or care that they need, then we're happy to do that. So we have an assertive outreach team. They will go through abandoned buildings, under bridges, and look for people who are homeless or at risk of being homeless, and try to connect with them, engage with them, try to encourage them to either come into shelter or to find that primary health care or to find some kind of housing.
While I was staying at the mission, and that was the one thing I'd be trying to get a worker, to help me. Like a lot of times my head, 1,000 things running through my head. It's hard for me to concentrate, to think of, where I want to live, and to actually do it. It's like I know that I need a worker to help me. That's what they're supposed to be there for, to help you find a place.
So when we think about homelessness, we think a lot about mental illness, and we think a lot about addictions. And so we know that approximately 70% of people who are homeless experience a mental illness. and we know that 30 to 40% experience an addiction. And so these are people who have very high needs and are high users of the service. You know, EMS talks about people who they've done 400 calls for in a year. So 2-3 times a day sometimes for the same individual, because that individual, in the depths of their mental illness and addiction, is just getting bounced from one place to another.
Our mental health system really seems to be difficult for people to negotiate. Doesn't seem to be user-friendly, and as that is kind of feels like it's collapsing, that's really worrisome for me, because a lot of people that we see are experiencing, you know, serious mental health issues or crisis or trauma, and the more that that's delayed in treatment of those issues, the more that people are going to be having to stay on the street.
I do understand many of the problems that the psychiatric hospitals have been facing. There's no question with the lack of funding and the fact that there's a real stigma a lot of times with that. But we have a lot of guys out here, to be honest, shouldn't be out on the street, that are being relied upon to administer their own medications and take care of themselves, who 20 years ago would have been in a facility. So it doesn't require necessarily new psychiatric hospitals, but there are better ways to handle it than necessarily putting them in homeless shelters.
The idea of community health centers is to provide care to those who do face barriers to accessing their services. And so an example might be the need for identification. And so if you were to go to a walk-in clinic, for example, you'd have to show a health card. So a place like the Intercommunity Health Center, not only would they provide services to people who don't currently have a health card, but they have ID clinics so that you can get your health card. So it's the idea of kind of bridging those gaps while also providing care.
But health is a huge issue. They did a study in Toronto a few years ago and found the average age of death of a person experiencing homelessness was 47. So this sounds surprising, but if you think about articles you've seen in the news about someone who's died on the streets, that's the age. We have the lowest age of mortality. We also have the highest morbidity rates. So that includes, of course, addictions and mental health, but that includes things like chronic diseases, it includes acute conditions, accident, injury, abscess, wound, foot care, just a whole complexity of health issues that people face who are homeless.
I was in an automobile accident. That's why I'm sporting this cane. I got nerve damage in my on my whole right side. Pinch sciatic nerve from the accident.
So a best case is when somebody gets knocked down but gets up real quick, and we're able to help them with that. Worst case scenario is people die. The fact of the matter, there was one of our gentlemen who died, I believe it was last winter, who froze to death in one of the parks. Last summer, one of our guys fell into the river and drowned. I mean, the fact of the matter is that death is constantly at these guys' door. And you know, people don't realize it when they're driving down the street. They don't know that these guys are in constant peril, but they're in serious danger.
If poverty and homelessness continues to be something we want to just move and push away and get out of our sight and not solve, then we're not going to solve it.
I had one visit with the gentleman at the landlord-tenant board, and he's been helpful. Like, he's helping me get this started, and he's given me some contacts to call that I still gotta call, but I'm too busy trying to do it all myself, and I'm overwhelmed by it all.